Better World Blueprint. Good humans doing good things.
To feel good, we know we need to put good stuff into our body. Stuff like water, healthy food, you know the drill. So it makes sense to me that if we want our brains to feel good, we need to put good stuff into there as well. And that's what you'll find here. Stories about people trying to make the world a better place, leading with their hearts. Good stuff for your mind and soul. Welcome to A Better World Blueprint. We can't hope to make the world a better place without investing in the future. Sylvia Arotin recognises this on a bone-deep level. As a Montessori educator, she's all about supporting children and their carers to thrive. In fact, her tagline is, changing the world one child at a time. In 2025, she won Woman of the Year at the Women Changing the World Awards. This is my chat with child development expert Sylvia Arotin. Hello, Sylvia, and welcome to A Better World Blueprint.
Hi, Siobhan. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm wondering whether you had a wake-up moment in terms of the work that you currently do. Was there ever a point in your life where you just thought, I want to work in children's education, but further to that, the specific way that you work in children's education is not necessarily the path everyone would take if they choose to work with kids. So was there a moment where you just had the epiphany that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, there was a massive moment actually. So it ended up being because of a major car accident. So I was in hospitality and the fitness industry, and I had this moment where, of course, we all get the small signs before trying to lead you onto a particular path, but we choose to ignore them. So this was a moment where it kind of really stopped me in my tracks, and I had to really reassess what I was good at, what my skill set were, and where I wanted to be in life. So that kind of moment when you don't have that physical capability anymore, you're really tapping into all other areas of your mind and emotions and trying to understand, okay, who am I and what am I here for? So that was a real big moment. And then I had spoken to some friends and family about, what I should be doing. And then one of my friend's mothers was visiting from Vienna, and she was a Montessori teacher. And so they had introduced me to this idea of Montessori, which is a style of early childhood education. And I had read up on it, and Maria Montessori was just an advocate and a passionate kind of feminist. And she was so ahead of her time, the first female doctor in Italy. She wasn't allowed to practice medicine. So she was just this pioneer of a woman. And I just thought, oh my gosh, who is this lady? And I need to know more, because it just totally resonated with me. So as soon as I found out about, what it was, I just thought, yep, this is what I need to be doing in my life. And then I think at that moment, that's how, my journey in Montessori started.
Had you any experience with children at that point?
No. No, I actually, if you asked me growing up, I think I would have been one of those people like, oh no, I can't deal with children. I don't really know. But I mean, it's really incredible how you totally shift when you find your purpose and passion. And it's not something that I'm doing, it's something that I'm literally living and being, and you just totally transform. And I think it's such a beautiful journey when you understand that and you go down it. But no, I definitely wasn't thinking at all about children. And I started actually working in Montessori in aged care. So at that point, I'd gone into aged care facilities, and we were working with patients that were living with dementia and Alzheimer's. So that's how I started. And then what happened was we were presenting this work to a bunch of schools and centres in Australia to kind of get more awareness about it. And one of the directors of one of the schools came up to me after and said, oh, I'd love you to come and work in my toddler program. And I said, oh, great. What's a toddler program? And she said, it's a program where the parents and the toddlers are there, and it's a facilitated play group almost with intentional resources and materials. And, we teach parents alongside children. here I am as a young 20-something-year-old with no experience being thrown into the deep end. So I think, having those experiences, having a mentor and somebody who can really nurture that passion and, that purpose is where I started on my journey.
And so, excuse my ignorance here, because I've
Yeah.
always associated Montessori with childhood education. But
Yeah.
was there a Montessori approach to aged care? Is that what you're saying? Or
So, Montessori education actually goes from birth right the way through. So, we actually have toddler programs, preschools, primary schools, high schools, and we've got quite a few in Australia that go all the way up to high school. And then there's Montessori for aged care. So, what it does is it takes the principles, because we know science tells us the similarity between the neuroscience, what happens in the first few years of life and the last few years of life. So we take a lot of those principles of independence and capability and practical life, and really help, in the aged care community, to really help them to have a better quality of outcome of life. So I think a lot of the principles that we want to have in that kind of sector, it already exists in this philosophy. So I look at Montessori more like a lifestyle. It's about, respecting, individuals and seeing them as capable and confident members of our community, and how can we really help them build life skills. So regardless of what age you're kind of putting those principles to, it's something that's universal.
so tell me, once you realized that you had this passion for learning about this method and how she applied it in different aspects of life, was there a straightforward path to working in this field at that time? Like, did you go and study somewhere? What were the next steps?
Yeah, so the next steps were that I was picked up at this, when we were presenting the aged care work. I was picked up by my ex boss. And so she asked me to step into a toddler program because one of the teachers was doing her prac for her Montessori training. So I had then done an assistant certificate so that I could step into the classroom. And then that's how it started. So I basically learnt on the job. I was working in a couple of schools in their toddler programs whilst studying and gaining that kind of knowledge. And then a couple of years down the track, we had set up some schools together, and I had my friends and family saying, "Oh, Sylvia, it'd be really great if you set up something out here, which is northwest Sydney." So there weren't any Montessori schools around the kind of northwest or western Sydney area. And so a lot of them were kind of saying, "Oh, look, could you please come out here and set up a program? It would be amazing." So that's how it started. It was really just responding to the demands of community and family and friends. And then having that belief in myself that, hey, I can do this on my own, after working like 3 jobs 24/7, 7 days a week, to save enough money to do something like that. So, yeah. And then I did end up coming out and setting one up.
Did you stumble at all along that path?
I'm laughing because probably one of the most pivotal moments was when I had put my resignation in to the school I was working at so that I could then start my own. And at that time, I had been requested by a family that I was working with to go overseas with them, look after their kids, teach their boys while they were working and traveling in New York on a business conference. As any 20-something-year-old on an all expenses paid trip to New York, I was right there. And I thought, yeah, this is an experience of a lifetime. Let me do it. So I did do that. In the last 2 weeks, I had decided to stay back because I wanted to visit my father, who was living in LA at the time. And I got severely ill, and I just started passing out all the time
Oh my
with
goodness.
with no understanding as to what was happening. So I had got on the plane to come home early because it was just really bad at that stage. I was starting to lose all function in my body. So by the time I got home, I was couch bound, not moving. I was on a phone call to my mother, who was living in Dubai at the time. And she said, "Oh, Sylvia, there's something seriously wrong with you. This isn't right." And I, like any young person, you're just like, "Oh, no, it's fine. It's just a virus. I'll get over it. And she's like, "No, I'm booking you in to see a specialist, blah, blah, blah." So anyway, I ended up in hospital. They admit me straight away because there was something seriously wrong with me. And it took a couple of weeks for them to diagnose me with a neurological disorder. called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a bit of a mouthful.
What a mouthful, yes.
I know, but POTS for short. And basically at that stage, I had lost all ability to sit, stand, walk, anything. So
Wow.
when you talk about stumbling, I feel like that was a really kind of monumentous moment for myself, because I had just decided that I wanted to start my own school and my business. And then when your body physically shuts down on you and you have no ability to function anymore, and you're completely relying on everybody else, to help with basic function, I was just sitting there thinking, this can't be it. Like, I had a very severe case of it, so that's why they could diagnose it quite quickly in a couple of weeks' time. And then, of course, they just put you on a bunch of medication and say, well, good luck to you. You might probably, not walk again, and you might need some assistance and la, la, la. But I was just thinking, this can't be my life. I have this passion. I have this dream. I need to open my school. So, yeah, that was a moment that I wouldn't say stumble. It was almost like just a hurdle or something that was there that I needed to kind of understand, okay, what does that mean for me? How can I get over that? And how can I still pursue my dreams and open the school whilst dealing with a chronic illness and losing most of my function?
What did you do?
So yeah, the thing with POTS is that a couple of the symptoms. So to help people who are listening understand about the condition, it's basically when your brain switches off the communication to your vagus nerve, which is the main central nervous system. It deals with all the blood flow, temperature regulation, heart rate, anything that you need to when you're functioning. So my body didn't recognize when I was sitting or standing, so it wouldn't be able to pump the blood up to my heart or my head, and then you would black out. So it was really about retraining the brain, so the synapses in the brain, to try and understand, okay, well, I'm sitting up now, you need to learn how to be in this position and be okay without so I wouldn't take no for an answer. I think the biggest thing for me is that I'm like the research queen. If you tell me something, if you tell me a topic or something, I am going to research until the cows come home to understand. And because I had that background in personal training and nutrition, I wanted to understand my body. I wanted to know what was happening on a neurological level, on a scientific level. If anyone has any questions about the nervous system, I'm sure I could answer them. So it was about what can I do? I changed my nutrition, I changed my lifestyle, I started experimenting with different diets and, recuperative yoga and acupuncture. And I literally did everything that I possibly could. I think one of the main moments for me was going over to Perth to a brain clinic. So they help you through biofeedback and neurofeedback therapy. It's a type of therapy that helps you understand how to regulate your heart rate variability, which is what happens in between each heartbeat, to give some sort of stability. But yeah, all of this work, it's about kind of putting in, like, how much are you going to kind of push to, I guess I wouldn't say defy the odds, but my situation could have been totally different if I chose not to do anything for myself, or if I chose to accept the situation that I was given and just say, okay, well, I'm just going to be on these 10 different medications and good luck to me.
So during that period, that sounds like more than a full-time job. Did you park your dreams of starting the school at that point? Well, how on earth did you manage that then, Sylvia?
So I didn't park my dream. So what happened was, I actually was visited by this amazing family when I was in hospital, the one that I went to New York with. And God bless Dale's soul, he walked in, and I'll never forget this, with a clipboard of all my logos for my school, right? My Montessori and all the different types of logos that were there. And I'm sitting there like, totally dizzy. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. So I think at that point, I just knew that regardless of my physical capabilities, I was still mentally wanting to be there. So the first thing was, obviously I started working on the logos and designing the concept of it. And then my mum convinced me, because she knows the type of personality that I am. She convinced me to enroll in a master's of teaching to keep my brain active, right? So that was interesting. It took me a long time to get through that, but at the same time, it was something that, like, it was still what I was really passionate about. And I think that keeping my mind active was really important. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, I physically cannot go anywhere. So how am I going to create a school if I can't go somewhere? Okay, well, why don't I bring the school to me? So I found a location, so a house that had a section that I could convert into classrooms. So we had a separate side entrance, classrooms set up so that I didn't physically have to go anywhere, and that I could literally like roll out of bed if that was possible. And it's really funny, the story of the fact that I was covering. So initially when I was covering for my colleague that was studying in the Montessori school with my ex-boss, I had told her, I said, listen, one day I'm going to open my school and you're going to come and work with me. And so lo and behold, she's been working with me for 10 years, but she had come on board as my support or a teacher. And we only just started running like 1 hour classes or 2 hour classes because that's all I could physically manage. And I would literally just lie there or sit there while she was facilitating the class with a couple of children while I was on my road to like recovery, I guess, or my health journey, like managing the two, because it's something that you just learn to live with. And then over time, you just get really good at managing the whole condition. And now I can say that I've probably got about 85 to 90% of my normal life back, whatever you want to classify as normal. But
Yeah, that's incredible. It might be hard to reflect on this because it is, as you mentioned, such an all-encompassing experience to be working and living in this kind of philosophy. But are you able to reflect on whether this work has changed you?
oh, there's no doubt, like 100%. I feel like it is the reason and purpose of my life. I feel like my deeper mission is to really change the world, like one child at a time. I feel like it gives you a sense of deeper meaning and purpose. When you wake up in the morning, it's like, what is the next thing? How can we serve others? What is it that I can do for families and children? We know that it's such a hard and difficult journey being a parent and having families, especially in today's society. But it's changed me in a sense that I won't let anything stop me. That resilience or that determination that you talk about when you have a particular dream. It's like, well, I'm willing to go to any length and no one's going to stop me from this mission that I have. So I feel like I'm basically just facilitating the work that I need to do. It's something that is just innately intrinsic, and it just makes me happy. It just brings this biggest smile to my face and my heart because it's just where I'm meant to be. And I think not a lot of people can wholeheartedly say that they've found that purpose or can really connect with it. So I'm just really blessed that I went through a lot of these kind of hardship moments because it's really brought me to who I am today.
Can you articulate when you say you want to change the world one child at a time? What would that look like in practical terms? Like, what is the practical impact of something like a Montessori education?
Yeah, so it comes back to this. So what I found was I feel like going through my training from a Montessori, like all the way through to a master's in teaching, the mainstream education system is lacking support for teachers in how to communicate with children and how to guide behavior. So the biggest things that I found that were missing when I went through all that was, why aren't we teaching educators how to communicate with children? Like, it's literally the number one thing that you need to know when you step into a classroom or a childcare center, like how to speak to children. It's not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. And then the other side to that was a lot of parents were asking, okay, Sylvia, this is great what we're doing in the school or in the center. Like, what about what we're doing at home? I decided, okay, well, how can I make this more of a mainstream kind of approach? Because communicating with kids, guiding behavior, social emotional well-being, that's a universal thing for all children and adults to be learning. And that's where Guide and Grow started. And we had built this online community. We have now almost 500,000 members globally in our community. And those are families and kids that have access to free information, guidance on whatever it is that they need help with. But when you say, like, what is the impact? How does it practically fall into place? Well, communities like that we build to allow parents to have that village. I go around and I speak at conferences or major childcare institutions about how to communicate with children. So what we're doing is we're helping educators or parents understand those fundamental skills that they might not have come across so that they can then use those with the children and parents. So that's what the practical kind of application looks like, because the more that we can kind of help guide that next generation of teachers, educators, parents, the more that's going to then impact onto the children. And you see the children thrive when they have the right support, when they are social, emotional, strong in their kind of security and sense of belonging and independence. And I think whilst I come from a Montessori background, it's just the principles that are universal that I now want to share with the world. My biggest thing that came out from this whole journey is I recently spoke at the Women Changing the World Summit and Awards in London, and I spoke about the verbal abuse of children. And so we talk a lot about physical abuse of children, but we don't talk about the verbal abuse, which is almost like the screaming, the shaming, the putting down, things that sort of look normal but are not really, and the impact that it has on children. So I think for me, it's like, okay, how can I then make that change on a wider scale? Who do I need to talk to? What do we need to do to make these subjects compulsory in teacher training? How can we support, the education system here in Australia to really keep up with the world that we live in? Why is everything else evolving and our education system stuck in, from 100 years ago? Like, it's not acceptable. So that when you say how does that kind of those principles of philosophy like go into that practical side? This is how, through training, through platforms, through kind of sending that message or giving people a chance to connect with all that material, and then trying to get up to government level and make a change on a wider scale. Because if we don't advocate for that, then nothing's going to change.
Have you been able to see the impact on any individual levels? Is there any family or child that you can think of? All of that work is super important. And when you can change a conversation, you really can change the world. But that's a really big, long-term goal, which is great that you have it. I'm just wondering if you've been able to see on a kind of more micro level when that impact is felt. Like, have you been able to get that feedback?
Oh, 100%. There are multiple like testimonials from parents where, we've had parents that have said, Sylvia, you've literally changed our lives. I never realized how to handle or deal with my child, and I would just cry every day. There was a particular parent, she would cry almost every day because she was just didn't know what to do or how to help support her child. And when you see that transformation and you see the transformation for that child, going from just biting and hitting and all those behaviors that we see because the child is obviously struggling and doesn't know how to cope. And then we work with them to then see a child who's so kind and compassionate and polite and is now in primary school and leading his peers, and that parent will still come back to you 10 years later and say, Sylvia, we will never ever forget the impact that you've had on our families. And those scenarios or stories are countless. We've worked with so many, and we have families that have now got their fourth siblings through the school, and they just won't go. They just won't go anywhere. And you see the evolution of these children that have come through, but even children that are from diverse backgrounds, sometimes that what we're doing in the school might not be the same or aligned as to what they're exposed to at home. But then you get the feedback from parents going, oh, my child's actually I've seen a change in their behavior. They're listening. They're cooperating. I've never seen them interact with their friends like that. So they see the impact. So even if it's something they don't practice themselves, they actually see what the impact of that environment or that kind of philosophy is having on that child. And then it kind of filters through into the home.
Sylvia, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's been amazing.
Child development expert Sylvia Arotin. To learn more about Sylvia, check out her website. You'll find links in the episode notes. I'm Siobhan Hunt. See you next time on A Better World Blueprint.